Today we are going to be talking about intervals and how to explain seconds, thirds, fourths, and fifths to kids in story form. So if you will join me, I'm going to share my screen as soon as my host disables that.
Dum, ba, ba. There you go.
All right, thank you. So here we go. We got this very uninspired looking piece of paper that you can download yourself from the Teacher's Lounge. So let's talk about what is going to happen here. We are going to be learning about intervals. So here the story starts. This is something you have all seen before. What is it, Daniel? Do you know?
I don't know if I know.
It's a store.
Oh, it's a
It's very
store. I was like, oh no.
all right. It's a store. It's very uninspired, right? So they have this is a store, and over here we have a parking lot. And like you've been to a parking lot before, I assume, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in the parking lot, we have some, really fairly boring things happening in this parking lot. We got, some cars parked, and people are waiting to go into the store. They're, excited for their shopping and various things. And so that is super boring. All right, kids. Yes, you know about parking lots. Everyone's like, okay, got it. So as the store has opened its doors, a few more cars start pulling in. And again, the super pretty boring thing is happening. Okay, that's not that exciting. And another car pulls in here. Okay, whatever, not all that exciting. But then what happens over here is that this mom pulls in, right? And the mom has this screaming child in the back who's like, wah! Right? And so the mom is she's like, she's a little frazzled. So she has pulled in and she is just parked on the line and like, this is not going so well. And they're like, oh dear, what's happening? But then what happens? Another car pulls in. Up, and in this car, something even crazier is happening because in this car, there are 3 children in the back, all screaming in the back seat. And it is, wah! They're very loud. And the mom is so frazzled that she can't even pay attention and she smashes into the car in the parking lot. Oh no, this is not good. This is a total disaster. Isn't it, Daniel?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, all right, let's go with this color. So now what we have going on in this parking lot is that we have these cars nice and neat tucked into their spaces over here. But over here we have these kind of messes going on. This one person on the line, but this one in their space, and then this one was parked neatly in their space, and this one is on the line. So we noticed that over here, right, these ones are all the same, right? They're in their spaces but these ones are all kind of mixed up, right? These ones are different. So you have lines and spaces, lines and spaces, lines and spaces. So what we now need is a new color. What color should we pick?
Purple.
Gonna go purple. All right, let's go with the purple. So what we're gonna start talking about now is let's have some purple notes appear as if they are just showing up. All right, and so if we have these purple notes appear in this storyline, this is all fairly reasonable. Okay, so we see that over here, these notes are in a space and in a space, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then like you can't totally color them in. There you go. Okay. And then you got this one. Same. They're all in spaces, This one is in a space, but this one's on a line, right? These ones are totally different. And this one is in a space and on a line. Okay. So then we take a break from the story for just a second, and we take the opportunity to say, like, okay, what we're talking about at the store is about intervals. And what intervals are seconds, thirds, fourths, fifths, okay? And you have the kids go ahead and try that, right? Start at seesaw C and play 2 notes and just say a second and a third and a fourth and a fifth.
Mm-hmm.
And then we talk about, like, hey, do you hear when you're playing these? Some of them sound like pretty nice, and some of them have a little bit of a harshness to them, right? See if the kids can listen and guess, like, oh yeah, that one's a little harsh. Oh yeah, that one has a little bit of harshness. Oh, that one's kind of nice. This one's kind of nice, right? Kids sometimes get it, they sometimes don't, but it's like it's a fun thing to kind of have a little ear training moment, right? So after they felt it on the piano and you're like, oh, seconds, thirds, fourths, and fifths, and then they can name that, then you go back to your story, right? And you're like, okay, so let's see what we were talking about here. Okay, so I'm going to get a different color just to make this page really crazy.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So over here, we have, do you think this will sound nice or harsh, you know, like with all this screaming, all right? So they're going to say that one's a little harsh. And so we have a second going on right here. And that's that sound that sounds kind of smashed together. You know, and you can point that out with the 3 screaming children. And you wouldn't believe how many kids remember 2 months later that there were screaming children in the car about a second. Okay. So the third that sounded really pretty nice is over here. The fourths that had a little bit of a harshness were over here. And the fifths that sounded really pretty nice are right there. So now that you know that this is the second, and that's the third, and this is the fourth and the fifth, you play it again, and you kind of think about this picture. Second, I can see the 3 screaming kids in the background. Ah, the third, so nice and neat and organized over here in your spaces. And then the fourth, oh yeah, there's a little bit of harshness there with the 1 screaming child. And then you have the fifth, right like that. All right, so then what you can do is you can say, you could take away, you know, or, you know, just have 2 pieces of paper, depending on if you're doing this in like the real world or if you are, you know, doing it virtually, whatever, you can remove the layer. So at this point, you can just come and point out that, you know, what we're talking about, here, actually. Let's go back here. Okay. Okay. Well, we'll see how this goes in the editing. All right. So then you have the fifth here that's nice and neat and organized. So what you can do now is that you can go over to your, you know, a second copy of your original sheet. And if you're doing this in the virtual world, like we are right now, you could add a different layer, whatever it is that works for you, right? And so now what we're trying to point out is things that the kids already know. And that is what a music staff is. And we are going to put this all together for them. And we'll have, you know, more sheets that you can just download out of the teacher's lounge, right? So, fast forward through all of this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, so now here we are back to having a music staff, right? And if we think about our cars over here, right, we're thinking about, we have a second right there. And let's pretend that we got, use a friend they can remember and think about, right? So you got Mr. Face right there. So what would a second be, Daniel?
1, 2, go green.
Ah, winner. Yes. So you'd have 1, 2, go green show up here, and that would be a second. So you'd have them play that on the piano again, right? You're reinforcing the story with tactile, auditory things that they're able to do. So we'll see that this is what a second would look like. All right, so let's start a third here with Mr. Face. All right, who would a third be?
Art CA.
Nice, very good. All right, so RCA would pop in here just like this. Okay, so let's take a second now. Now that we know that a second kind of looks like this on the staff and a third looks like that, let's take a look at our parking lot over here. We have a second smashed together like this and a third nice and neat. Now remember, third is always the same and second is always different. Okay, so if we hide our cars and go back to our staffs, do you see how you want to just point this out over and over again? These ones are the same, right? So we have thirds are always a space and a space. You can also have them be a line and a line. Whatever it is, they just have to be exactly the same. Okay, and so that gets explained to them. And then we move on to fourths. All right, Daniel, can you remember our fourths the same or our fourths different?
Different.
You are a genius. So you had the one car tucked nice and neat in its space, but then the mom came up with the screaming child in the back seat, and so she ended up parking on the line. So you have a space and a line. All right, so let's go back to the picture and remember a space and a line, same way that those pink notes are drawn in. All right, and so if a fourth is different, as we go back to our notes on a staff, again, this is kind of small, so you draw another example of the line and the space opposite. But now that we're back here and we're talking about, we finished the fourths, those are different, just like a second is different, and we're getting to fifths, and fifths are going to be the same again. So if you have Mr. Face, you're all the way up here with Happy C, right? And so these are the same. So after you teach the kids about these intervals, it's really important to let them play intervals, and it's really important to let them do a couple worksheets. And we'll have those all provided for you in the teacher's lounge. You can just download them and print them and let the kids do some exercises where they're drawing these seconds, thirds, fourths, and fifths. And go back to this story, because the kids, again, will really remember this story. They'll be able to reference the story 2 years from now. It's kind of a fun thing that happens, that they can lock this story into their brain and have something they can relate to, because every one of them has been in a parking lot and they have this to relate to. So I hope you enjoyed hearing about how Casey and Friends teaches intervals. And do you have any burning questions, Daniel?
Nope.
No? All right, cool. Well, we'll see you in the next video. Bye, friends.